everybody, and welcome to the weekend review edition of the Total Soccer Show. I'm your host, Taylor Rockwell. Joining me on the other end of the line, back on the East Coast, it's a man who knows all about the 405 and wants to tell you his directions. It's Ryan Bailey. Hello, Ryan.
Hello. Did you know the 405 is really slow? Cars don't go very fast on it. I experienced that firsthand this weekend.
So do you have alternate routes now that you want to explain in elaborate detail?
No, it's just crawl along or get in the carpool lane if you can, I think is the Californian way.
I see.
But I love California. It was a lot of fun. Thank you for bringing up my trip.
Of course, my pleasure. And now we're back to break down the weekend's action.
Well, you know, it's a very special day today as well, Tay. It's International Podcast Day. Did you know?
I did not know. I saw some tweets that were talking about like people's favorite podcasts, but I did not really know what the context was. So now I know.
It is hashtag International Podcast Day. And I've got to say, of all the podcasts out there, this is one of them.
I actually saw you tweet that we were one of your favorites, which made me happy, but then I couldn't tell if that was genuine or just because you're on it occasionally and you like yourself.
I'll leave that in the air.
All right. No comment on that one. What exactly are you supposed to do to celebrate International Podcast Day? Do you wear like headphones in like the whole day round, which is something I do pretty much anyway? Like, are there special things you're supposed to do to celebrate? Do you leave milk and cookies out for, I don't know, Steve Jobs?
In case he comes down the chimney tonight, perhaps, yeah.
You leave a fruit plate out for Steve Jobs' ghost, I think is what you're supposed to do.
For me, I am recording a podcast with your good self. I'm wearing my Pod Save America Friend of the Pod t-shirt as well, so I'm very pod-themed today. All
right, you're on theme. I like it, and you are here, as always, to help me break down everything that happened from the weekend. We're kind of all over the place because I'm going to say this weekend it didn't have as many like big-time results. There weren't as many big-time games like to start off with. Like you didn't have a lot of big rivalry games in the Premier League or in the Bundesliga and La Liga. You had a few of those here and there, and so I feel like that kind of afforded us the luxury of maybe looking at some other stuff we wouldn't normally look at.
Great, let's do that. I thought you were going to say we're going to look at like tennis or something.
No, never tennis. Never tennis. But we will start with the Premier League, still start with the Premier League. And I want to start with thumbs up to Liverpool, simply for getting it done. A 1-0 win on the road against a feisty and pretty defensive Sheffield United team. And it really was an ugly goal that saw Liverpool get through. It's a shot from Gigi Wijnaldum, but it's definitely Dean Henderson spilling it into his own goal. But as the old cliche goes, champions find a way to win. And Liverpool have done just that.
Yeah, I think that's a cliche I probably spout on every edition of this show, and it holds true once again here, doesn't it? I mean, you could call it a lucky win in a way and a lucky goal, certainly, but you look at the stats and Liverpool had 70% possession this game. They had 16 shots, 4 of which were on target. And, you know, looking through, they had a lot of shots which were much more wayward than you would expect from their forwards in this game. And I kind of get the feeling, as Sheffield United like a road game specialist, because I think they've lost their last 4 home games now, if I'm not mistaken, and they have got a few results on the road, you know, getting a draw at Chelsea and whatnot. I think are they a sort of team that are more of a threat when they're on a rival territory?
I wonder if maybe that is the case because it's still relatively early in the season. This is an oversimplification, but since I started us off with a cliche, I'll just now go into an oversimplification. Maybe it is just the case that they're a promoted team, that we're still early in the season, and maybe there's this idea like, oh, you're coming to a kind of like more impressive stadium than you're used to from the championship. Maybe you're going to be a little bit overwhelmed by it. Maybe you're just going to be easier for the team to get the result at home. And if you have that approach, if you're just like 95% focused instead of 100% focused, that 5% can make a big difference. Although if Sheffield's goalkeeper, Dean Henderson, is not 100% focused either, then maybe it doesn't end up making that big of a difference because he spills it into the net. Afterwards, manager Chris Wilder, like really, I found it like refreshing and simultaneously pretty harsh that he was sort of like, he knows he needs to do better. And definitely, I think he said like, I'm not going to like ruffle his hair and say it's all good or anything like that. Like he definitely vocalized his frustration that the game went the way it did and the goal happened the way it did.
Yeah, it was just unfortunate all round, basically, wasn't it? Not that it wasn't a badly struck hit, though.
No.
Per se.
No, I mean,
straight at the goalkeeper.
But there's some power behind it. It's a decent hit, but it also means that even though it's a fluke of a goal, it still means that Liverpool start the season perfect. 7 wins straight, no draws, no losses. So a decent way for them to start it and to continue to kind of push that title race. Now have the gap that they have. We still have the articles about is the title race already over, which makes me laugh uproariously because again, it's just
I should write
barely.
One of those today.
You probably should. It's about to be October, and at that point, I think you're legally allowed to start writing those. When you're 2 months into the season, it's okay.
Well, there's a 5-point gap now, and last year at this stage, if I'm not mistaken, they were even on points, Liverpool and Manchester City. So it's worrying from that respect. But also, then you got to look at last season where Christmas Liverpool had a 7-point lead, and it swung the other way again, obviously.
Something like that.
So there was an 8-point swing between Christmas and the end of the season, the other way. So I'm not too worried for the sanctity of the title race just yet.
I'm not either, but I'm enjoying Liverpool stretching this run of results together and putting that pressure on Man City because it's not a position they tend to find themselves in, at least not since around Christmas of last season. And so to have it happen this early, it will either make them elevate their game or make them get a little bit nervous and maybe not have the performances they need to have. That said, they did have a strong performance this weekend away to Everton, a 3-1 win for City. Ryan, have you got any thumbs from this game?
I got a few thumbs to this one. I mean, kind of a thumbs up for Man City for getting the result here, the 3-1 result away from home. Not an easy place to go, Goodison Park, but it was a lot closer than the scoreline suggested. I think I'm going to give a thumbs down, though, to the biggest disaster of the day. It was the kit, Man City's kit.
I wasn't sure which thing you were going to go with because there were a couple of disasters in this one.
There were some other disasters, not least of which, of course, Theo Walcott getting a very serious injury at the start of the game, which is not a laughing matter, of course. But what is a laughing matter is Manchester City's kit in the Tequila Sunrise thing going on here. If there is ever a situation where a team could be fined points for a kit they wear, is it not this one?
So is it just that the kit was ugly and was Tequila Sunrise to you, or is it because it's so different than the normal colors that you would expect City to be wearing?
Oh, I'm all for change. I like different things. That's fine. It's just it was really horrible to look at, aesthetically on my eyes. Hurt my eyes. Although I will
it's
say,
strange colors, and the fading is kind of odd as well, that it fades into one and then back into another. I don't know what to make of that one.
Yeah, it's very odd, and I think Barcelona had a similar third kit a little while ago, didn't they? Which they had, which I think faded into blue. But I will say there was another kit crime on a game we'll probably speak about later. Fiorentina wearing that green colour, which I think
threw me off.
Brighton also wear, which is you shouldn't be able to wear that colour green when you're playing on a green field. No, don't like it. No.
I don't like it either, especially because I kept every time they would cut to a player, I would think okay, that's the goalkeeper, expecting Fiorentina to be wearing purple and the goalkeeper to be wearing green. Instead, they were all wearing green, and it made me confused. Here, it made me confused a little bit, but I have a theory that it actually made Everton confused, and they were convinced they were playing Watford, and so they just kind of took the pedal off foot off the pedal a little bit. They didn't play as tight as they could have because they go up 1-0. They end up losing 3-1. I'm assuming it's because they assumed it was Watford, thought it would be an easy game, and in the end, it was Man City wearing decoy jerseys.
Yeah, they didn't technically go one up. I think Gabriel Jesus scored the opener.
Oh, yeah, good call. Never mind. See? Even I'm confused.
Yeah, it's confusing. The kits were very very odd. But I will say on that first goal, Kevin De Bruyne's first touch cross. It's a move we've seen a few times from KDB this season. Isn't it glorious when he does that? And the header, obviously, to finish that first goal as well was wonderful.
I love it especially because it reminds me of you would watch David Beckham cross a ball at his prime, at his peak, and just think yep, that's a ball that only David Beckham can hit. That bend, the trajectory on it. Kevin De Bruyne has that same sort of delivery. It's not the exact same because it's lower and has more whip on it, but he hits that ball with such regularity that I do now think of it as a De Bruyne ball, and I also think of it as completely undefendable.
Bend it like De Bruyne, the sequel. Here it comes.
I like it. It's. I don't know if he's ready to star in any sort of future films, but we can see what happens. And I say it's undefendable. I should add it can be defended against if the person who's on the receiving end of that ball makes a meal of it. It was not a Kevin De Bruyne ball that Gundogan missed. I think it was a Riyad Mahrez cross, but that maybe was the worst miss I've seen in quite some time.
Thumbs down, baby, for Ilkay Gundogan on that one, the miss of the season. It's one of those cliched, and we're peddling in cliches very much today on International Podcast Day. That's what people come here for. Harder to miss, right? Harder to miss. He's inside the 6-yard box, hits the bar from that kind of distance. Yikes.
I'm not saying this is what happened, but I have had those moments where there's the wide open goal and you have just that little like quarter to half second of knowing like the goal's wide open, don't miss this. And as soon as you think to yourself, I better not miss this, you're definitely going to miss it. And that's all I can figure is that Gundogan knows that ball's coming across, knows he's got an open goal, knows, again, the delivery from Riyad Mahrez, like all he needs to do, he being Gundogan, is get a body part to it and not put power behind it, and that ball is going to go in. And I think just that momentary, like, wait, what do I do in this moment? And there's a little bit of freeze, and he ends up hitting it too hard. And as you said, it is more difficult to miss than make, and yet somehow he pulls it off. Yeah, that's miss of the season for me right now.
Overthought it. That was a frustrating moment, as was, if we can just jump back to the equaliser, Everton's equaliser, with Calvert-Lewin getting a little header on the end of it. That was going in anyway, right?
I've got thumbs down. Thumbs down to Dominic Calvert-Lewin.
Did he steal that one?
He definitely stole that one. Seamus going with a great little chip. It's going across. It's definitely going in. And it was almost, Calvert-Lewin at least times his run well enough, but it was almost one of those we've seen in the past where the ball's going in and then the other player runs in to smash it home and sort of like celebrate emphatically, but that player is offside and now the goal no longer stands. At least on this occasion, the goal stands. But yeah, that was definitely going in. And then Dominic Calvert-Lewin with the unnecessary diving header on the line, but still gets credit for it. I guess he pads his stats, if nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Seamus Coleman's not going to get on the top scorer list. He's not going to threaten you. Let him have that lovely little chip. Let him have that one. And then as soon as the header was, as soon as he got on the end of it, I was like, hang on, have we got some offside call here? Because a split second goes through your mind that he's had an absolute mare in doing that. But he got away with it in the end. And I was thumbs down. 2 thumbs down for that one for me.
I agree, but 2 thumbs up to the banner that the Everton fans erected, which was Ryan. Your foreign language abilities tend to be better. Can you go with the pronunciation on this one?
I believe it is no racismo. Is that right?
You put some spicy marinara behind that one.
I did. I think it's no to racism in Italian. A nice banner with Moise Ken. Are we saying Keane or Ken now? Because I believe it's Ken. Because it was Ken, and then has he now said it's Keane? Since he's been in
I can't. I have wondered this as well. I can't tell if he has like corrected the pronunciation or if he's just kind of accepted that the British press is going to call him Keane in the same way that De Gea is De Gea and all of those types of pronunciations. So maybe that's, and Martinez is Martinez, which is one that still throws me. So maybe it's that. Either way, I think people who know who you're talking about. And either way, it was a good banner.
It was a great banner. Nice show of support for Moise Ken Keane there. Wonderful stuff.
And I think it was £3,000 raised by supporters around the world, not just from fans like on the day, which goes to pay for the banner, but then also the excess, I believe, was donated to a couple different charities, including Kick It Out. So all in all, a good message to convey at a time when maybe Italy are not conveying that same message. I'm going to be talking to Leander Charlakens later in the week about what's going on in Italy and sort of the... not even difficulty, just kind of refusal to deal with some of the racist incidents that have happened, as well as why they may be happening and how they're justifying it. So I look forward to that conversation, even if I know it's probably going to be wildly depressing and sort of a bummer. So should we just move on instead, Ryan?
Yeah, nice preview of that show, by the way.
I do what I do. I do what I can. I try. I've got a couple more thumbs in the Premier League. I want to say thumbs down to Mike Ashley for just being consistently the worst. Leicester City 5, Newcastle 0. Mike Ashley did not play in this game, did not manage this game, so not necessarily at fault for the scoreline such as it was, but with everything that went into this season, for Newcastle to be in the position they're in, I give all the credit to Mike Ashley. This is a team that allowed Rafa Benitez to leave 5 weeks before the season started. They bring in Steve Bruce 3 weeks before the season begins, who had been warned, I learned this today, by multiple people, including Alan Shearer, not to take the job. Was told, it's not going to go well. It is a very negative, toxic atmosphere. You don't want this gig.
Shearer would know about that, of course.
He certainly would. And apparently this is Steve Bruce's dream job, he said, which I feel like any job that he gets in the Premier League is his dream job, but whatever. They then lose 66% of their goals thereabouts from last season. They sell Ayoze Perez. They fail to bring back Salomon Rondon. He leaves as soon as Rafa Benitez leaves. They bring in Joelinton, Yoshinori Muto, and Miguel Almiron, obviously last winter. 19 appearances for them this season, 0 goals. The only positive for me is that DeAndre Yedlin returned and played 16 minutes, and there's only 1 goal scored while while he was on the pitch. So that's your positive, but definitely a lot of negatives for Newcastle. And I really struggle to see how they managed to stay up this season with everything I've just mentioned, and the fact that, again, it's only late September, early October. Feels like things can get dramatically worse before they get any better.
Or they might get amazing. Remember, a month ago, this is a team that beat Tottenham at their stadium in London. So who knows? Steve Bruce might turn this ship around, but it doesn't look very likely, does it? I think they're the heavy favourites for relegation.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been to Newcastle, but it's a fantastic city. It's a one-team city. You know, you've got this beautiful stadium up on the hill when you the fans walk towards it on 3 p.m. on a Saturday. It is I think the loudest stadium I've ever been to.
Really?
It's wonderful atmosphere in there, despite all the nonsense those fans have to go through. And just to have that fan base, to have that kind of atmosphere, to have those kind of people backing you, and to still be the way Newcastle are, it defies belief. It really does.
And Daryl and I have talked about this previously, but obviously you have your own experience and your own knowledge when it comes to Newcastle in England. But like, from what I understand, that is sort of one of those cities that like things stop when the team plays, or at least it was when they were somewhat decent. That like that. Like the climate, the difficult like temperatures at times, the harsh winters, like it makes it so like people rally around that team, from what I understand, and to have them be this poor, I cannot imagine how depressing it must be to be a Newcastle fan living in Newcastle right now.
Exactly that. They deserve better. They definitely deserve better. I don't know what else to say about it. They're a nonsense organisation, aren't they?
I think I moved us on from like one sad thing to another sad thing. So let's just continue it on by rounding out the Premier League. Ryan, you had down that you, I guess, wanted to discuss Manchester United v Arsenal, which will be happening later this afternoon. I don't know what to expect other than to probably be disappointed. To expect disappointment is where I am. Where are your thumbs on Man United Arsenal?
Well, I mean, obviously this might be a done contest by the time people listen to this, but Man United are 12 matches unbeaten against Arsenal, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe at home, that is. And I think. Oh, so what was the last time they met? Was that that was a 2-0 win for Arsenal, wasn't it, as well? That was when it was Emery versus Solskjaer as well. So I don't know how to feel about this one, because I could see either team mess it up, basically. But I suppose the point I wanted to talk to you about is United's attacking line. There's getting a lot of heat, this attacking line at the moment. Doesn't seem like they're a little bit thin up front there. So do you think, what's the solution in your opinion? Do you think they buy big in January? Do you think they try and actually get their really talented players to be really talented?
How many minutes have you got? 30? 40? You ready for this? I mean, so I think I saw just before we started recording, again, this is probably going to be sort of like a dead point because the game will have happened by the time a lot of people hear this, but I think Rashford and Pogba included in the squad for the day, which means we may see Rashford start. It was expected it would be Greenwood, who's 17 years old, Marcus Rashford himself, not the oldest of players, but certainly not indicative of like the strongest attacking lineup that Man United could have. So I think they probably... I don't think Jonathan Wilson wrote a good piece this weekend about how like sacking Solskjaer isn't going to solve any of the problems, and I do agree with that. I think he probably is part of the problem, but I think he is one of the more small-scale problems, which is insane to say about the manager of a Premier League team such as Manchester United. But I think they need so much more overhaul in terms of the people making the decisions about who to sign in January, which is a feeling I've had for a while. I think they need a director of football. I think Ed Woodward can't continue to operate the way he has been. And I think even though they're still financially strong, like continued failure definitely turns people away. And like Rodri, this is unrelated, but like Rodri had the quote today about like how Manchester is a town and it's cold and the weather's bad and you can walk wherever you want and it's not very big. And like that is the case. Like Manchester is a rainy place to live, especially as we get into the winter. And like it's just not a very big draw. And so I say all that to say that like if you're struggling, you're not playing exciting football, things seem like a mess across the board. Similar to Newcastle, do people want to go there? Do people want to sign there? I think it's a thing that Manchester United probably have to deal with at some point. So maybe that means they go out and sign a bunch of exciting attacking players. I still just don't have the faith that that really solves any sort of problem aside from giving them more big names who could perform but might as equally underperform.
Yeah, and I think obviously the idea of throwing money at the problem has not worked in the post-Ferguson era,
has
no?
It?
So
has it not?
I think we can safely say it's not been a successful strategy. Yet the one thing I think that would be key is something you pointed to there, is the appointment of a director of football. That's something they've said they would do, isn't it? On record, they've said they're going to do that, and they haven't. And the one thing that needs changing is structure and people who make the decisions, and that seems to be where they're falling short.
It certainly does, because those people who are making the decisions then have, like, I hope this makes sense, but it makes sense to me. It's like if you have a vested interest in proving that you're correct, then that does kind of put blinders on you. And I like to, as an example, like Ed Woodward, he's involved in bringing back Paul Pogba. There were reports this weekend that Pogba now wants something like £400,000 a week, which seems to be an attempt to kind of force his way out of the club. But if you're Ed Woodward, who has a vested interest in saying, like, no, this was a great signing, it was a great bit of business, he's awesome, we want to keep him. Like, it's not out of the realm of possibility for me that he actually does that and pays Pogba that amount of money. Even if Paul Pogba is an incredible player, it then sets that precedent or furthers that precedent that they established with Alexis Sanchez, and it means that everybody else expects to be paid that amount. And it just seems like they need somebody to come in who has the actual, like, football IQ to know how to deal with these issues. I personally would love to see Edwin van der Sar given a go, even if he's CEO and not director of football at Ajax. I still think he's done a very good job, but it just seems like there are so many minor to medium to large issues that all stem from the board, from the front office, from the way the club is run, that even if they sign a forward or two, and even if Solskjaer figures out some of the tactical issues he's had, I still don't have faith in that organization long term to kind of return the club to where they're expected to be.
I think the answer is clear for everybody here. Harry Redknapp, director of football. He loves earning money. He loves getting to teams you wouldn't expect back into the Champions League. All the ingredients are there.
Perfect. You can sign some more players whose names he can't pronounce. That sounds like
Nico Crenshaw will return. Old Trafford.
He absolutely will if Harry Redknapp's appointed. Let's not let that rumor happen. Let's instead talk about today's sponsor. Today's episode of the Total Soccer Show is brought to you in part by SeatGeek, our old friends over at SeatGeek. They make buying and selling tickets as easy as possible so you can get your money or get your tickets and be on your way.
Absolutely. You can get sports on there, live music, comedy, so much more. Anything that's got a ticket, you can get it on SeatGeek, and it has all of them in one place. And the thing I love about SeatGeek, Tay, as I've mentioned before, is the scale of 1 to 10, the traffic light system of whether you're getting a good deal. If your tickets are a good deal, it's not necessarily ranked by price, but if there's a seat they see as, that's great value for money, green light, 10 out of 10, and other seats ranked thusly. Big fan of that kind of, I just love that.
I really enjoy. I had one a while ago. I was looking at like concerts, like a stadium concert sort of thing, and the deal was red, even though the tickets seemed like inexpensive. And I was very confused by this until I clicked, and you can like see where you're going to be sitting. You can kind of see what you're getting, and then I realized that it was like one of those partially obstructed quote unquotes, which is to say that there was a giant pole in the way, which blocked like the view of maybe 3/4 of what you would be able to be seeing. So again, they have that kind of feature to protect you against buying tickets and then staring at a pole for 2 hours.
That's one of the big shames of Premier League stadiums being renovated and changed, by the way. The lack of poles obstructing views anymore. That used to be a pretty classic tenet of going to a Premier League game.
Yeah, and I mean, unless you're going to buy tickets to Bayern Munich and you want to watch Robert Lewandowski, then it makes sense. But otherwise, I wouldn't go that route. And I would say, Ryan, for you, I was sort of excited on your behalf because, I think I saw last week, maybe it was, there was a big announcement coming out of Charlotte. I thought maybe it was going to be MLS related. It was not. It was the Carolina Panthers owner saying that he wants to like turn Charlotte into a destination town for music and large shows. So I think Billy Joel coming your way. I'm assuming you're excited.
That's right. Yeah. The exciting new modern face of the Carolina Panthers is going to be a Billy Joel concert, so I can't wait for that.
A man my brother exclusively refers to as William Joel. But yes, William Joel aside, a quick look at the App Store shows over 50,000 5-star reviews for SeatGeek, and that shows you how many people have been happy, but also how easy the app is to use and how much it gets used for people to find tickets. And if our listeners want to use that app and get $10 off, they can do so. Ryan, can you explain how?
You've buried the lead, Tay. The good news is there's $10 off here.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. SeatGeek purchase, absolutely. What do you do? Download the SeatGeek app or go on the website. Promo code TSS for $10 off that first purchase. That's TSS. That stands for Total Soccer Show.
It does. And I like that you almost went podcast there for your first podcast. I think you really are on brand today.
International Podcast Day is all on my mind.
Well, what other leagues are on your mind, Ryan? Where should we go next?
Oh, how about Spain? Should we go to Spain? I like
Let's
Spain.
go to Spain.
Do you like Spain?
I like Spain. I've never been to Spain, but I like Spain.
Oh, well, you should go sometime because
I really should.
It's the land of thumbs up for me right now, Tete, because they're having a lovely parity party in their league table. Have you noticed? Parity party of 5 points separating the top 8 teams there. That's only matched by the Bundesliga, which has 4 points separating the top 9. Those Continentals, they're having a wonderful time right now, Taylor.
They really are. They finally moved away from the old narrative of only one of 2 teams or one of 3 teams can win it. Instead, we've got lots of different teams, and to the extent that it confuses me because midweek I think Athletic Bilbao were top of the table last week when I talked to Graham Ruthven about all things La Liga, and when I went to check the standings today, I was like, oh, there must be a typo because suddenly now they're 7th. But that's how quickly things can swing and change when you have it as tight as you do, which again makes it really exciting because then you do have that feeling of all of these games matter. It's not just when Real or Barca or Atleti slip up or when they play each other. It does seem like lots of different teams can beat lots of other different teams this season, so it's kind of all to play for, at least right now, again, in late September, early October.
Yeah, now we're all jumping on that Granada bandwagon right now.
Oh, yeah, we are.
And shall we move from the excitement of the La Liga parity party to Atletico Madrid 0, Real Madrid 0?
What, you mean the most exciting game that's ever been played? If you enjoy, I saw, I forget who it was. Was it Julien Laurent? I think explaining this game is if you really like tactical adjustments and kind of responding to what the other team is doing to completely nullify what they're doing, then you would have loved this game because it's a 0-0. But I think that was maybe a bit generous and not quite the same overall vibe as it was the last time these two teams met.
It was slightly different when they met in the US this summer, wasn't it? There was a few more goals in that.
Was
encounter.
It 9 more goals?
It was approximately 9 more goals to the nearest goal. Yeah, so a little different. Was that a Meadowlands? Was that in New York? That one? I seem to remember.
It feels like a Meadowlands type thing.
Feels like a Meadowlands kind of game, and I believe it was. So this one a little bit more cagey. And by the way, props to Zidane for doing some tactics there. Well done. That's interesting.
For doing some tactics.
Doing some tactics. That's not something I associate with Real Madrid anyway. These two sides spent almost 600 million euros in the summer.
And it totally showed.
And we got a 9-goal swing from the previous meeting.
And we got some of the best performers being the performers that we've come to know from both sides. Karim Benzema has the probably the best chance, the big header that is well saved by Jan Oblak, who has been with Atleti for a good amount of time now, but pulled off some massive saves for them to keep this 0-0. And I would say for Atleti, the player that stood out, and I know you will agree because you noted it first, and then when I went and watched this game, he stood out as well. Thumbs up to Thomas Partey, who looked very, very good in this game.
We're having a parity party and a partey party today.
Yeah,
frankly,
you put it together better than I could. Well
Very
done,
Ryan. Good. This was his 100th Liga game for Atleti. Is he the best midfielder in España right now? Because he's been... We know his quality, but in this game he particularly shined. He's got great vision, massive engine, really good in the duels, and there's the stats here. He had the most touches in this game, the most passes in the opposition half, the most recoveries, and the most tackles. So, how long until Man United sign him and ruin him as well? That's the question, I suppose.
I really want them to sign him, is my answer to that. It is the case that things are so poor at United that I'm now fantasy watching other teams to be yeah, that guy, let's get him. But Thomas Partey is one of the players who I genuinely do think would make a massive difference for one reason you mentioned in there. His passing statistics are very impressive, but sometimes, we've talked about this on the show before, you and I have, and I believe Daryl and I have, that passing statistics can be misleading because a center back can have 96% pass accuracy, but that's because they're passing to the other center back or back to the goalkeeper or to one of the fullbacks, and that's it. Not exactly high-risk passes. So when I saw Partey's stats, I then went and watched kind of the individual breakdown of his passing performances. Yes, there are some going backwards because he's the number 6, and if he's dropping in to pick up the ball, if it comes from one center back, he may lay it off to the other. But that seemed to be more of a rarity than it was the sort of norm. Instead, it felt like Thomas Partey's entire task was turn and play the ball forward or find a way to play the ball at least sort of diagonally forward, and he does that with a consistency that I found really impressive, because even under pressure, he would still try to have the ball at least go wide and forward to one of the fullbacks who was advancing, or one of the midfielders, or he would sort of feint one way, turn the other, throw off the defender, and then play the ball forward. But that he was trying to get it out of Atleti's half and into the opposition half and then continue forward with it is an incredibly difficult skill to pull off, and that he pulled it off so consistently is a big reason why I think Atleti have been as strong as they have, and why I don't look forward to Manchester United signing him and then ruining him.
Pass and move, that's the Atleti groove. I like the stuff. But the fact that he was the standout player in this game, and I think he was a standout player,
I agree.
It's a damning indictment of some of the big stars on the field, wasn't it? I mean, Gareth Bale didn't have a great one. Diego Costa wasn't great. Joao Felix got subbed, wasn't even that great. Benzema, we mentioned, didn't have a great one.
Yeah.
Eden Hazard, he needs a big old thumbs down from this situation, doesn't he?
He looked like a player who has played. This looked like a derby being played at the end of the season when Eden Hazard was playing like one too many games without a break, and that we're very early into the season, only 7 games played in La Liga right now. How fatigued he looked, especially in the second half. I think he ends up coming off in like the 75th, 77th minute, something like that. Like it was telling to me that that's when you want him to kind of kick it to that next level and really raise his game and find a way through, or find a way to play a ball in for Gareth Bale or Karim Benzema or Jovic, who comes on as well very late, although I guess they didn't overlap then. But like you want to see him sort of find a way to get a win, to create something, and it didn't seem like Hazard had that, especially in the second half. If anything, it felt like he was becoming more of a liability, and that's why he needed to be substituted.
Well, it's really sad to see how much he's struggling in general, isn't it? I mean, in this game, no shots at all. There was that moment, I think, at least one time when Partey absolutely sold him on getting past him as well. The Champions League game, he was barely on the field, metaphorically speaking. I don't know. I just feel sorry for him because he's really nice. He's a great player and he's a really nice guy. So I want him to do well there. But it's just, it doesn't, whether it's fatigue, whether it's frustration, whether it's not fitting in well, something's not quite right there. Mm-hmm. And there was a little passage here from Marco, which I'll read you. What is Hazard lacking? Zidane was asked by a journalist. Not much, he responded. We have to get behind him. He put a real good shift in. Does he mean on the field? Where was this shift? I didn't see this shift.
His shift from first to second gear, I think, is what Zidane was especially impressed by.
Maybe he makes some work shifts in the canteen during the week or something. Maybe it was that. I don't know.
Oh, I do think from what I've read that like Hazard is the type of player who once the game is over, and he's on to the next thing. Like he does not necessarily like live and die by results and his on-field performances, which can be good because it means that you're not like sort of like lumping all this pressure onto yourself. It doesn't mean that you feel insane amounts of pressure in every single moment. But in a place like Madrid, where those fans can turn on you very quickly, especially if you were supposed to be this marquee name coming in to turn everything around, if you don't raise that game and then you have... Like, when you're winning and you're sort of like, oh, whatever, it's just winning, like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's this idea of like, oh, he's so cool, he doesn't even care. Like, he's just off kind of like living his life and winning. But when you're losing, it then suddenly becomes like, oh, he's so aloof, he doesn't even care about things. And I do feel like this is one of those times when if he doesn't turn it around and start to perform more consistently for them and create more for Madrid, you will see that switch happen when suddenly the fans turn on him and then he is a lazy player who doesn't really care about the team.
Maybe him and Gareth Bale can go off and form a little clique of their own. Wouldn't that be fun?
A little golf clique?
A little golf clique. I like it very much so. But I think this game in general, by the way, I previewed this game for Yahoo Sports, and I did predict. I'm proud to say I did predict a draw in this one. 6 of the last 8 between these have now been draws, and you could look at the stats. You could look at the fact that they've both had reasonably slow starts and the relative parity of these two teams and the league. A draw seemed like a fairly inevitable result with this one, but it also seemed during the game that both of them were pretty happy with the draw. Was it a little less intense than you expected as well?
Yeah, but with that said, like I remember going back to like Madrid derbies when De Gea was playing for Atleti, and it felt like a foregone conclusion that it was going to be Madrid winning. That wasn't really their rival. It was always El Clasico. That was going to be the determinate series of games.
Yeah.
So that this one actually felt like it mattered is maybe a step in the right direction. And I mean, worth noting, it's it's the weird reality of Real Madrid that we're talking about this team as though they're in crisis and need to deal with so many different issues, and they sort of do, and yet they're still top of the table. Atleti did not impress, did not look as strong either. As you said, João Felix did not kind of raise that game to that next level for the price tag he carries, and yet they sit third. So it's 15 points for Madrid. I think that would mean 14 points for Atleti. It's so tight there, and yet it does seem like because of the way things have gone and because of how many points have already been dropped, it also feels like both teams are kind of in crisis mode, even as they're first and third in the table.
Speaking of crisis mode, should we move on to Crisis Club Barcelona?
Oh, of course, Crisis Club Barcelona. The fourth in La Liga, and yet also still in crisis.
Very much so. Well, the good news is it's thumbs up because their away game crisis is over. They've won an away game, ladies and gents. Getafe being their victims this weekend. 2 goals in this one. Luis Suarez and Junior Firpo, last week's villain of the week, getting a goal in this one. Good for him.
He listened. He was sad that he let you down, so he responded with a strong performance and a solo goal in this one.
Very much so, and a nice one. Nicely taken as well. And this being the first away win of Barcelona's season, obviously building on that midweek win over Villarreal as well. A little bit of a better performance than against Villarreal here, but still this team are not quite physically there. It still seems it's not quite 100%. They're not speaking to each other 100%. Not a huge understanding between the players, I should say. Still some defensive naivete going on here. I mean, they're not quite at the races, are they? To put it lightly.
Not quite yet. But this is still a team that did not have Lionel Messi play in this game at all. I don't think he was even in the squad.
No.
They finished the game with 10 men because Lenglet picks up his second yellow in the 82nd minute. So with that said, to be able to kind of go on the road, given the difficulties they've had, I do think this is probably more of a confidence-building win for them than certainly it was for either of the Madrid teams in that draw. But then a lot of performances have been for Barcelona this season because Luis Suarez returns, he gets the goal, strangely assisted by Ter Stegen, which is not a thing you usually see. Nor is
Route 1, baby,
on the score sheet. Yeah,
as a Wimbledon fan, that's my bread and butter. That kind of goal.
I had a feeling you'd appreciate it, but it does seem like I equate it with this. Like if you're playing poker and you're losing early, but you're learning about how your opponents like to play, then later in the game when you start to dominate because you've been paying attention to them. This is where I feel like Barcelona are right now. Is I think they've been losing, but they've been figuring things out. They've been playing, I guess, shorthanded because they don't have Lionel Messi. Now, when he returns, it seems like maybe they figured some stuff out. You put those components together. The fact that they're in fourth right now, but again, 2 points behind Madrid at top of the table, it does seem like they're going to start clicking here in the near future and putting together a strong run of form that sees them push back up to second, if not first. That said, things change on this show. 1 week, Newcastle, the greatest team on the planet. The next week, or a few weeks later, they're decidedly the opposite of that. So we shall see. But I was more not heartened because I'm not a Barcelona fan, but I felt like this was a stronger result than even a 2-0 scoreline might have suggested.
Yeah, definitely. And Firpo can definitely be lumped into the zero to hero category there with Newcastle as well, for sure. What I would ask you, though, Tate, is Lionel Messi, based on his current form and predilection for injuries these days, does he deserve a spot in this team?
I mean, yes. I take your point, and it's like he's been injured, he's been knocked around a little bit, he has not been as involved this season. Other players have kind of come in and done their best to deputize, but in my mind, they're still deputizing. It's still Lionel Messi until he is not able to play the way he has played, until you can see the obvious glaring deficiencies in his game. Then maybe he falls off. But honestly, until it's very painfully obvious, I still think Messi should start for Barcelona every single week.
Follow-up question. We've been marveling at Messi and Ronaldo, obviously, for the past decade or so. Is this a season where we finally see Messi drop off? This is it. End of the road.
It seems like it's possible that this is the season we see both of them drop off. Admittedly, I have not watched as much Juventus lately because Serie A has been interesting in other realms, and Juve tend to be the machine that wins. But from what I have heard, Ronaldo is having his own injury issues, but is also looking a little slower than we've seen him look, a little less fit than we've seen him look. And I think Lionel Messi, to have missed as much time as he already has, I think this is we're probably getting to that point in both of their careers where it starts to be more noticeable some of the dips. Not necessarily like it goes from 100 to 0, but probably like 100 to 80, and then hangs around that 80 period for a while, and then maybe dips a little bit further down, which is a sad reality that I think we're all probably going to like without meaning to, I guess subconsciously like work against and be like, oh no, he still got it, because it's been so exciting to have these two go back and forth for so long. The idea of that not being the case anymore, even though they're in different leagues, they're still the two premier players in the world, I would say. I kind of am not ready for that to be over, is I guess maybe where part of my answer comes from.
I feel the same way. I feel like we've known it's coming for a while, but I'm not ready for it yet.
Well, I'll tell you what we've known was coming for a while, but we are now ready for is another word from today's sponsor. Does that work for you, Mr. Bailey?
Oh my gosh, your segging is marvelous.
I do my best, my friend. And today's show is brought to you in part by our friends at HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit delivery service, you get easy seasonal recipes and pre-measured ingredients delivered right to your door. All you have to do is cook and enjoy. Ryan, we have not talked too much about your culinary endeavors on this show. Do you like to cook, and do you feel like HelloFresh would help you enjoy cooking more or help you start to enjoy it if you don't like it at all?
I relate my culinary expertise to my soccer expertise. I'd like to be a lot better than I am.
But you're English, so you think you're good at it? If we're going to continue with the soccer to food analogy, like the English think they're good at it, but maybe the cuisine is a slight letdown? That's what I'm saying.
I look down on American cuisine.
Of course, obviously. You have to. It's your obligation.
No, in reality, I'm the exact opposite there. But I do love myself a home fresh delivery service. Because one of my gripes about this country, I don't have many gripes about this country, Tay, but it's the grocery store experience. In that, I don't know if you find this as well, but we find it, you can't get everything you want from one grocery store. Like, one grocery store does the best meat, one does the best vegetables, one does this, one does that. You can't, there's not like elsewhere, perhaps in Europe, where you get everything under the same roof. And so I like something like HelloFresh because I don't have to engage in that whole thing.
Weirdly, so yes, I agree with everything you said, and I think a big part of it is like the more specified, like my tastes have gotten. I sound so pretentious, and I don't mean to, but like the United States is often mocked as being the land of the giant grocery store where you have 15 types of one product, and that is often the case with certain things. But I absolutely agree with you that lately it has required me going to 3 different grocery stores because, like, if you're looking for olives and you want a specific type of olive, and that grocery store only has like the jarred green ones with pimento in the middle, that might not be what you want, so you got to go to the other one. And yeah, you've got to like shop it around and find different things. And then if you're looking for like a meal that you've got prepared out, that you've got planned out, but maybe this store doesn't have lemongrass, or this store doesn't have, I don't know, buckwheat flour, or whatever you might need, then you do have to go to a bunch of different places, which makes HelloFresh all the more useful because they send you the prepackaged ingredients with the recipe card that has the pictures that explain how to put it all together. So you don't have to go out and buy that extra little thing. You don't have to go find like a little bit of salt that you may not like have forgotten to get, because I often forget to get salt when I've run out. Well, here, they'll send you that little bit of salt that you might need to complete the recipe.
With those ingredients you've just listed, you've revealed yourself as being way more bourgeois than I expected of you. But that's good because with HelloFresh, you get
olives and buckwheat flour?
Exactly.
Here's your pro tip from I learned from my brother. Buckwheat flour, either no gluten or very limited gluten. So if you were trying to be gluten-free but you still like pancakes, buckwheat flour gives you the hearty pancake that is extra delicious.
So if anyone's still listening, HelloFresh has 20-plus seasonal chef-curated recipes each week. There's something for everyone, from family recipes to calorie-smart and vegetarian and fun menu series like the Hall of Fame and craft burgers. Who doesn't love a craft burger? I know you do, Tay, because you love buckwheat.
Let me tell you about my... No, I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is tell you that you can get $80 off your first month of HelloFresh right now. Go to HelloFresh.com/TSS80 and enter the code TSS80 to get that $80 off your first month. One more time, that's HelloFresh.com/TSS80 and enter TSS80 at checkout for $80 off your first month of HelloFresh.
Like 8 meals for free there, baby. Wow.
That is correct. And I appreciate the baby being thrown in as well. I appreciate HelloFresh sponsoring today's episode. Thank you very much to our friends over at HelloFresh and buckwheat flour. Now let's move to Italy, shall we?
Yes.
My thumbs from Italy are mostly involving Milan, or the Milan clubs, I guess we could start with, because Ryan, you brought to my attention that we may have a new San Siro in the very near future.
Oh, yes, of course. The San Siro is up for... It's been touted for a while that one club would move away or they would redesign and, the whole area around the San Siro. Looks like they've got it down to staying in the general area of the San Siro but completely redesigning the stadiums. We got two competing designs here, Tete. One's called the Cathedral, which is apparently... It draws its inspiration from Il Duomo and the Galleria. Kind of looks, it's got a similar square aesthetic to the current San Siro. The second option is the Rings of Milano, which has got on its facade more than 16,000 faces of fans of the club sort of splashed onto the side of it. That sounds wonderful. I would love to know how they pick those faces. The Rings of Milano looks a bit more like the Wanda Nara Stadium, Atletico Madrid's famous home, which I always call that for no good reason. And... I'm going to give thumbs up to the Rings of Milano just because it feels a bit Games of Thrones-y having loads of faces all over the side of the stadium, and I want to see it.
Ooh, see, okay, you went that fantasy route. The problem for me is that anytime anything is called The Rings, I instantly think Lord of the Rings, and then you're going to have all those jokes of, like, who is the Lord of the Rings when you have the Milan Derby? And I don't know if I need that in my life. Whereas the Cathedral, I really did enjoy, and then I saw your note that you preferred the Rings, and I was prepared for a fist fight. But the Cathedral, as you said, it draws the inspiration from, like, local architecture, but it also just has, to me, a very classical style. It has that kind of rectangular boxy feel, and it felt very like Northern Italy, these two teams coming together in the Cathedral to battle it out. It felt like the drama was there. But I take your point, the faces in the rings, it's got the sci-fi fantasy element that also lends itself to, violence and insanity. So it could work either way.
And to draw things back to Man United for you, because I love to do that, to tease you every time, does this not just highlight the fact that Old Trafford has been left untouched for like a couple of decades now, and they could really probably do with redesigning the experience?
Ryan, what are you doing?
Well?
Ryan, don't do this. They're going to hear you, and they're going to add another 100,000 seats that they don't need at the expense of, like, yeah, we'll go to League One for a while. It'll be fine. Ryan, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to me? I don't like this at all. I also don't like the AC Milan organization. I'm taking it back to Milan. I'm not going to let you distract me too much. Because I'm going to say thumbs down to the entire AC Milan organization. They lose 1-3 to Fiorentina, indicating that Milan were at home. They now have 6 points from their first 6 games, have only scored 4 goals. And the really telling thing here, the Curva Sud, the diehard section of supporters for AC Milan, left before the final whistle for the first time in decades. This was a much covered thing in Italy, in Serie A, that Milan fans have grown so dissatisfied with a team that has done so many things over the last decade or so to disenfranchise the fandom that they finally walk out before the final whistle. And I think it was justified given how lackluster Milan looked and also how strong Fiorentina looked.
So on the index of fan annoyance, does that rate higher than throwing a moped down from one tier to the other?
I think it does, because you have to be there physically to throw the moped down from one tier to another, and it takes a lot of effort and dedication to get the moped into the stadium past security. Just walking out is just an easy thing to do at the very end. A moped in and then off the railing is wildly dangerous and incredibly frightening, but at the same time, it takes effort, is all I'm saying. Yeah. It also takes effort to continue to employ the series of managers that Milan have employed or not employed. They hired Paolo, this offseason. I was reading about this a little bit, that they essentially brought in a manager who clashed completely with the style they've been playing and with the personnel they have. Gianpaolo prefers I think it's a 4-3-1-2, a very narrow 4-3-1-2. Milan have very attacking fullbacks. They have lots of attackers who can flourish out wide. That is not what he wants them to do, which I think partially explains why they've struggled the way they have. But being Milan, they're now faced with the decision of, do they back the manager and kind of double down and tell the players to get on board and keep him there long term, or do they bring in somebody else to try to right the ship? And it feels like they're going to bring in somebody else to right the ship, is the way these things tend to go, at least.
Who would have thought that the manager who's had 9 Italian jobs since 2006 wouldn't be a long-term prospect? It baffles me.
It really baffles me too. And if he's gone, the names I've heard mentioned are Claudio Ranieri, is one that was kind of thrown out. I think there's Max Allegri, it has been on there as well. I don't. It feels a little like a slightly higher grade version of Newcastle, of why you would go from the most successful club in Italy right now to a team that are an absolute dumpster fire. I don't know why Allegri would take that, which is where rumors come in that they're now talking to Andriy Shevchenko, who is, I believe, currently managing Ukraine, that he could come in and take over. And it brings about the question, Ryan, why do you think, and I mean this sincerely, although I expect any answer you would like to provide is welcome. Why do Milan keep turning to former players? Why do you feel like that is their solution to this? Because it's been, Seedorf, Inzaghi, Gattuso. If they go with Shevchenko, that's another one. I think Montella was in there. I think he played for them briefly. Like, it just seems to be this approach of, we'll sign a former club legend, and that has to fix things.
I think they just like nostalgia. I think that...
I mean, that might well could be.
I imagine the executives at Milan just sit there watching Friends on Netflix all day. That kind of, that's their vibe.
Remember when things were good in the 90s?
Remember the 90s. Remember when we did things well. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, of all the people we've been discussed, you'd think that a return for Allegri might be the most... I don't know if you'd even call it sensible. This is the Newcastle of Italy, as we have discussed here. But in general, talking about this game, if I may step back to this game, I think we could have called this result. In fact, I did. The fan of my work who's listening, hi mum, will see that I previewed this game last week and said that Fiorentina would win. I think one reason is because they are set up to exploit the the defensive weakness that Milan have on the width, which is something you sort of mentioned there, which is a Gianpaolo trait. And Fiorentina, although they've had a terrible run in Serie A, this, I think in midweek was only their first win in Serie A in 19. They have looked like they're about to get going this season. I think they had ran Napoli close on the opening day. They drew Juventus. They've got great players they've brought in. New Jersey businessman Rocco Commisso is getting things done, it seems, a little bit. So Fiorentina might be coming back a little bit this season. And I called the win here, and I think it came to pass. And yeah, things not looking so good for Mr. Gianpaolo here.
I don't understand how you made Rocco Commisso perfectly Italian and then also Staten Island at the same time, but you did, and it's well done by you. That's some good pronunciation. And it was telling to me in watching this that Frank Ribery, not Frank Lampard, again, former players becoming managers is on my brain right now. Ribery, for that third goal, it looked like he was 24 years old again. He torches that Milan defense, and yeah. That could well be Ribery rounding into form and feeling very confident, but it could also be that Milan's defenders were just so on their heels and incapable of dealing with kind of vicious counterattacking threats that they back off and they let Frank Ribery score a legitimate highlight goal. He just cuts and embarrasses and then puts it back across himself into the far side netting. It's a lovely goal, but it highlights just how sort of standoffish and just not up for the fight Milan appeared on the day.
They made Frank Ribery look like peak Diego Maradona in this entire game. Even the penalty for the opening goal, that was from a really lovely run down the middle. And then I will say the other goals did come from wide positions. The penalties were, the ball came in from a wide position, which highlights the point we're making here.
Yep.
But yeah, Frank Ribery, wowzers, what a game from him! I love it.
And I believe he's the player who draws the red card. He gets bottom, the studs up to the shin. That never feels too good. So I guess Milan identified him as a threat early and tried to take him out as a threat early, but it ends up backfiring the red card. And then Ribery goes on to score, and Fiorentina go on to get all 3 points, and Milan are left pondering what could be if Shevchenko comes in and takes things over. I hope that doesn't happen, but we shall see. So let's just move on steadily to a few other games to get to before we call it a day in this weekend review. Let's move to the Bundesliga. Let's talk Leipzig-Schalke.
Leipzig, Schalke, eh?
Mm-hmm. We have Leipzig at home.
I don't know why I said it like that. I'm sorry.
I assumed that you were pulling a Daryl Grove and stalling for time while you pulled your notes back up.
That's exactly what I was doing.
That's what he tends to do. Leipzig 1, Schalke 3. I'm going to go negative first because Schalke had a great performance. But I'm going thumbs down to Alexander Nübel. I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's got the dots over the U. It confuses me. But that's Schalke's goalkeeper, who I guess just really didn't want a clean sheet. He didn't want Schalke to get too arrogant, too confident from this one. So he instead goes for to parry, to punch a shot, and it deflects off his knuckles, goes in off the bar. Not the best goalkeeping for Schalke there.
Yeah, it's not exactly what I would call good in any sense of the
What
word.
I would call good.
I mean, what was it an attempt? It wasn't an attempt to catch it. It was kind of a half punch. Was he going for the punch? Was he not expecting a shot at all? I don't understand how a professional could handle the ball like that. It was straight up bizarre.
Yeah, I think he sees it a little bit late because it's a shot from like relative distance, like near the top of the box, through some defenders. So he sees it late, but I think there's also so little spin on the ball. And it's maybe a little bit similar to the Gundogan miss, where he still has time to react even though he sees it late. But because there's no spin, I think he overthinks it. And instead of just getting his body behind it, blocking it, and then falling on top of the ball, he last minute decides, oh no, there's velocity on this. I'm just going to punch it clear. That's the smartest thing to do. But a knuckling ball with no spin is going to be a little bit difficult to read. And if you're going to punch, you got to hit it dead on. And he doesn't. And that's why a glancing punch does not land the same way maybe a knockout punch would. And that's why I would say the ball ends up in the net.
Yeah, very much so. And I did a little bit of research on Alex Nübel there. He did actually turn down a big money move to Leipzig, so they'll be glad they saved their saved their euros on that one. He also played outfield until he was 14 years old, and he's only 22 now. I quote from one of his former coaches: he wanted to be more involved and sometimes had to be persuaded to go in goal. So do you think that David Varga had to sit him down at the start of this game and say, "Were you playing goal today, please? Were you?"
You've got me wondering now. You've got me wondering if maybe he was like, fine, I'll go in goal. But then at the end was like, wait, 3-0, we've got the shutout. The way this is going, they're going to keep me in goal the whole season. But if I punch it into my own net, now they're going to have questions. Now I get to play outfield. Yes, I'm with you now, Ryan. You've stumbled upon the correct theory. And while we're giving credit to innovative thinkers at Schalke, we should also give credit to David Wagner. 100% pure American David Wagner, not at all German-American, not at all mostly German. But David Wagner has led quite the turnaround there at Schalke.
Wags, well done. Yeah, 4 consecutive wins, 13 goals therein. He's definitely got them firing. They're definitely a very different beast today than they were last season. Completely took apart this Leipzig team defensively, didn't they? It was very comprehensive performance from him, very impressive. We can expect big things of Schalke this season. I would like to, if I may, give a thumbs up to one of his charges as well. The Welshman, Rabbi Montondo. I don't know if it's Rabbi or Rabbi. It must be Rabbi, right?
Rabbi, is he Welsh? I didn't know that.
He's Welsh, yeah. He was at Manchester City. He's of Welsh origin. So we had 2 Welshmen. We had Eithman Ampadu on the other side of things. And
that was what threw me off.
And Montondo here as well. Actually, Schalke's US account tweeted, Croeso I Schalke, which in Welsh means welcome to Schalke.
That's good. I'm glad that they're tweeting out nice things.
Yeah.
That's lovely for them. But it was more lovely for me that Schalke kind of executed their game plan exactly as they wanted to, because it felt like they knew Leipzig were going to be aggressive in their pressing, aggressive in trying to win the ball back and get as many shooting opportunities as they could, and it's been a thing they were successful with so far this season. So for Schalke to kind of sit back, cede possession as much as they felt comfortable with, and then look to like wait until Leipzig overcommit numbers, then hit on the break. I mean, that's essentially where all 3 Schalke goals come from, even though there's a penalty in there. It's still kind of the ability to execute a counterattacking game plan pretty flawlessly has to have Schalke fans feeling at least slightly more confident than they were at this time last season, especially since they're now 4th as opposed to in/near the relegation zone.
Very much so, yes. And got quite a few exciting players to watch. I mean, Weston McKennie had a decent game in this one, but you got Harriet's a really fun player to watch. He got an assist on this one as well. And Matondo, I think, has shown himself to be very good in embarrassing goalkeepers who try and punch away his shots. So there's a few really good players. It's nice to see Schalke on the up again.
And we've got John Joe Kenny in there. You've got an Englishman to make Ryan Bailey even happier.
Well, he's from the Republic of Liverpool, so I don't know if that counts as English per se. But
never mind then. Never mind. I've changed my mind entirely. But yeah, Schalke turning things around. With that said, it is Munich back on top in the Bundesliga. Leipzig 2nd, Freiburg 3rd, Schalke 4th. But I think we have them as one of the leagues of parity as well, right? Because you've got 4 points separating 1st and 9th place in the table. So a tighter Bundesliga than we're used to as well.
It is very, very tight up there. So, yeah, this was RB Leipzig ceding first place to Bayern Munich this weekend, of course, as you say.
As I say. I will also say that I'm going to give thumbs down very briefly to the Intercontinental Derby, which happened this weekend. But I'm giving it thumbs down for being sort of the worst but like the worst case of being exactly what was expected. 0-0 between Galatasaray and Fenerbahce. Not the prettiest of soccer. I watched 30 minutes or so of this one, and it was pretty ugly, pretty physical, pretty direct, which is what these games, especially these derby games, can be. But then outside of that game, there was fan violence, reports of a fan stabbing and I believe killing another fan over an argument. I'm going to assume those were two rival fans. These tend to be very well policed, like to an almost militant degree. I don't know if they allowed fans in this time, away fans that is. There was a good 5-year period where away fans were not allowed to travel to these types of derbies, and the fan violence would be the exact reason why. So it was sort of like basically living up to all of the worst stereotypes of this type of derby between these two teams that really don't like each other, but instead of keeping that on the field, it boils over, and that is the last thing I wanted to see. So thumbs down all around for the Intercontinental Derby.
Oh boy. See, do you follow Galatasaray? Did you live in Istanbul? Was it Istanbul you lived in?
We did, yeah. My wife and I did for a year and a half. We lived like 1 block from the Beşiktaş Stadium. So I think that's the team that she would claim to support. That's the team that has a lot of love in my heart. But I went to Turkey for the first time in 2005 when I was in college. And the kind of host student who took me around was a Galatasaray fan. That was the first time I went to a game in Europe. I went to their old stadium where everything moved despite being concrete. The whole stadium would shake when people jumped up and down. It was a pretty good time. So that's where that loyalty comes from. But yeah, Galatasaray, Beşiktaş would be the two that I follow in that area of the world for sure.
I'd be intrigued. It's been a while since I watched Galatasaray play, but you got Falcao, Ryan Babel,
you do.
Nzonzi, Belhanda. It's like the island of lost toys for players, really, isn't it?
That is the Turkish league, because you've still got like Adebayor thumping around in the Turkish league.
Right.
I think you still have Arda Turan unless he's in prison or holding somebody else up at gunpoint. It's a lot of players who you kind of were like, oh yeah, like Fernando is still in there, former Man City cast off, I believe with Galatasaray, but he may have moved on since then to another Turkish team. There's a lot of changeover, and it's always an interesting league in that regard. Also, always an interesting league, especially at this time in the season, would be Major League Soccer. Let's round out our weekend review by giving some thumbs up or down to the various teams in MLS. Ryan, where would you like to start?
Should we give a thumbs up to Los Angeles, the city that kindly hosted me this past weekend and who got themselves that supporters shield that we all knew they were going to get for a little while with a nice, rousing 1-1 draw in Minnesota.
Yes. I think this is belated thumbs up to them for that one because it's been a long time coming, and they may have secured it earlier in the week, but we've not yet talked about it since it happened. But we should just say thumbs up to LAFC for winning the Supporters Shield. We'll see if we end up giving them thumbs up for kind of keeping the playoff race very exciting, because we do have a race in the Western Conference. There are 2 spots remaining with 1 game to play. And I'm going to say thumbs up to Colorado for making that possible, keeping hopes alive. They start the season 0-9-2, not very good. They come roaring back 12-6-4 since that point. They've beaten some of these stronger teams in the Western Conference to get themselves into a position where, very unlikely, but still mathematically possible that with 1 game to go, they could end up making the Western Conference playoffs, which would be quite a feat.
Yeah, so it does look a bit unlikely, but there's a chance. There's four teams going into 2 here for these final 2 spots, as you say. Colorado, they're at LA this weekend.
That's where I say LAFC could make it even more interesting, is if they decide to let Colorado win. I doubt that would be the way it would go down, but maybe they rest some people. Maybe they're looking towards the playoffs. LA, give some of their starters a couple of days off. Carlos Vela doesn't need to score any more goals. He's got plenty. So they sit him. Maybe Colorado get those 3 points. That puts them on 45, but then they're still going to need some help with the teams ahead of them.
Yeah, and also interestingly, Portland playing San Jose this weekend. That's a swinger, isn't it? I like the sound of that.
I don't know what to make of these final games because, as you said, Portland home to San Jose. They're on 46 points. They're in the 6th of 7 playoff spots. Then FC Dallas has the 7th one right now. 45 points, home to Sporting KC. San Jose right on the outside looking in with 44 points, and they are away to Portland, as we've already said a couple times. Yeah. But all of these games could go any different way, and I wouldn't be surprised. Portland have not been very good down the stretch, nor have FC Dallas. Jeremy Ebobisse is sort of the saving grace for Portland in the last couple games. So if he doesn't perform, if Portland continue to struggle, maybe they do drop some points. I'm guessing it would be Colorado hoping that Portland win and FC Dallas and San Jose lose. That would do it, and then Colorado can get that spot on 45 points, but even then they need some goal difference. So lots still to play for in MLS, and I'm assuming, given that they all play at the exact same time next week, Ryan and I will be back next Monday to kind of break down some of what happened there.
Let's do it. As for predicting it now, put the names in a hat, because I've got no idea.
I mean, it seems, yeah, you know what, I was going to try to throw 2 in there, because I think we had on the notes, we were going to try to figure out who gets those final 2 spots.
I mean, I like
really,
Dallas.
yeah.
I like Dallas to get one of them.
All right, I'd be fine with that. I like Paxton Pomykal. I like Brandon Cervagna. I like a lot of the youth movement there. So fine, FC Dallas in the playoffs. Who else?
That's the one I don't know. I can't figure out. It's just because that Portland playing San Jose, I can't figure out what happens and how that... Oh.
I feel like Portland have had a difficult season with the Iron Front and dealing with Major League Soccer. So yeah, let's give Portland that other spot as well, because I feel like they deserve it. Even if Chris Wondolowski, shirt off celebrating with the San Jose supporters while serving his 1-game suspension, made me love him and them all the more. I'm okay with things finishing as they are right now. I'm also okay with things being dramatically different at this time next week. But again, if they are, and even if they're not, Ryan and I will be back to break down all that happened in MLS on the final day of the regular season.
Absolutely. You're so easygoing. That's why we all love you, you know?
Hey, I love you too, buddy. I love you too. Even if I'm not entirely convinced that your mom is your one fan, because thus far I don't actually know if she's listening to the show. I have yet to hear for sure that she has hard thoughts on what you said or what I've said. So until then, I'm not even sure you have the one fan, Ryan.
Well, I'm not even convinced my mum has ever heard the word podcast before, so we'll see about that.
As I've said before on the show, my parents have, but they still don't know what that word means. Yeah. They've heard the word, they just don't know what it means. But Ryan, thank you as always for joining me to break down the weekend that was. It is, as always, very much appreciated.
Always a pleasure, never a chore.